The microphone sat 3 feet from my hand, gleaming under the chandelier lights like a loaded gun. My son's voice droned on about love and commitment and gratitude, words he'd never understood, not once in his spoiled, entitled 26 years. I watched him squeeze his bride's hand, watched her flash that practiced smile at the crowd of phonies who'd paid $200 a plate to witness this farce. My cheek still burned where she'd slapped me an hour ago. "Dad's just here for show," Jake had told me 2 weeks before the wedding. "Don't embarrass us. Don't talk to anyone important. And for God's sake, don't make a scene." I'd nodded like I always did, like I'd been nodding for the past decade while they bled me dry, while they took and took and took until there was nothing left but this hollow shell sitting at table 12, tucked in the back corner where the important guests wouldn't have to look at me. The mechanic, the failure, the walking ATM who'd outlived his usefulness. But things change, people change, and sometimes silence becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. I reached for the microphone. 3 months earlier, I'd been a different man, quieter, weaker. My apartment was a testament to that weakness. 30 years of marriage ended when Linda ran off with her yoga instructor. 5 years of raising Jake alone after that, working doubles at Morrison's auto shop to keep him in the private school he demanded. The place looked like nobody lived there. Maybe nobody did. "You're pathetic," Jake had said the last time he visited, 3 months before his wedding. He'd come looking for money, as usual. "Mom was right to leave you." I'd been changing the oil on Mrs. Henderson's Honda. My hands were black with grease, my back ached, and I was 52 years old with nothing to show for it, but a 1-bedroom apartment and a son who looked at me like I was dog shit on his shoe. "I need $5,000, he said. "The wedding venue wants a deposit." "I gave you $8,000 last month for the engagement party. That's gone. Crystal's family expects certain standards. You wouldn't understand." Crystal, his fiancée, a 24-year-old Instagram model who'd never worked a day in her life and treated service workers like they were invisible. I'd met her twice. Both times, she'd looked through me like I was a window. "I don't have $5,000. "Then get it." Jake examined his fingernails. He'd always had soft hands. I'd made sure of that, working myself into the ground so he wouldn't have to. "Take a loan against this dump, sell something, I don't care. But Crystal's not starting our marriage in some basic venue because my father's too cheap to help his own son. It's not about being cheap, I don't have it." He'd looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment, just nothing. "Then I guess you won't be walking me down the aisle," he said. "Crystal wanted her father to do it anyway, said you'd probably show up in some greasy jumpsuit and embarrass everyone." He left. I stood there in my garage, surrounded by tools and car parts and the smell of motor oil, and something inside me cracked. Not broke. Not yet. Just cracked. Like a windshield after a rock hits it, still holding together, but you know it's only a matter of time before the whole thing shatters. I finished Mrs. Henderson's oil change, cleaned up, locked the shop, drove home through streets that all looked the same, gray and forgettable and worn down by time. That night, I sat in my apartment with a beer I couldn't afford and thought about my life, really thought about it. Not the surface thoughts, the ones you have while you're busy surviving, but the deep ones, the ones that keep you up at night. When had I become this person, this ghost who let people walk all over him? I used to be someone, used to matter. I pulled out an old photo album. There was a picture of me at 25, standing in front of a construction site. I was a foreman then, had a crew of 15 men who respected me. Had a future. I looked confident in that photo, strong, like I could take on the world. What the hell happened? Linda happened, Jake happened, life happened, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped fighting, started accepting. Became the kind of man who said yes to everything because no felt too dangerous. My phone buzzed. Text message from Jake. Did you get the money yet? Crystal's getting impatient. I stared at those words for a long time. Crystal's getting impatient. Not please or thank you or I appreciate everything you've done. Just a demand, an expectation. Like I was a vending machine that dispensed cash whenever someone pushed the right buttons. I typed back, I'll figure it out. His response came immediately. You better. Don't make me look bad. Don't make him look bad. That was rich. I'd spent 26 years making sure he looked good. Sacrificed everything so he could go to the right schools, wear the right clothes, drive the right car, and this was my reward. I deleted his message, finished my beer, made a decision. The next morning, I went to First National Bank. The loan officer was a kid named Tommy who couldn't have been more than 23. He had the kind of eager smile that comes from not knowing how the world really works yet. Mr. Patterson, what can I do for you today? I need to take out a loan against my apartment. His smile faltered. How much are we talking? 20,000. He pulled up my account on his computer. His smile disappeared completely. Sir, with all due respect, your current income and age, this isn't a great idea. The interest rate would be, I don't care about the interest rate. But sir, my son is getting married. I need the money. Can you do it or not? Tommy looked at me for a long moment. I could see the pity in his eyes. The same pity I'd been seeing everywhere for years. Poor Robert Patterson. Can't even afford his own son's wedding. I can do it, he said quietly. But I want to make sure you understand the terms. If you default on this loan, you could lose your home. I understand. And at your current salary, you'll be paying this off until you're 65, maybe longer. I understand. He printed out the paperwork. I signed everything without reading it. What was the point? I was trapped either way, trapped by my own inability to say no, trapped by a son who saw me as nothing more than an ATM, trapped by the pathetic shell of who I used to be. $20,000 hit my account the next day. I transferred it to Jake immediately. He texted back, Finally, Crystal says we're good now. See you at the wedding. Not, thank you, not, I appreciate this. Just confirmation that he got what he wanted. I sat in my empty apartment and felt that crack in my chest widen a little more. The wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks later. Thick cardstock, embossed lettering, the kind of invitation that screamed money and pretension. My name was spelled wrong, Robert Patterson, instead of Patterson. I called Jake to point it out. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. On the third try, Crystal picked up his phone. What? No hello, no greeting, just annoyance. The invitation has my name spelled wrong. Does it matter? It's just a program. It matters to me. Well, we already sent out 500 invitations. We're not reprinting them because you're sensitive. Is there something else? We're busy. I wanted to talk to Jake about the ceremony, see what he needs from me. She laughed. Actually laughed. High and sharp and mean. He needs you to show up, keep quiet, and not embarrass us. Think you can handle that, Robert? I'm his father. You're a wallet, a nearly empty one from what Jake tells me. Do us both a favor and don't pretend you're more than that. We've got important people coming to this wedding. Investors. Crystal's influencer friends. People who matter. We can't have you bringing down the vibe with your situation. My situation? You know what I mean. The grease under your fingernails. The cheap clothes. The whole struggling mechanic thing. It's not the aesthetic we're going for. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Crystal, I paid for this wedding. Every cent of it came from me. And we're very grateful. That's why you get to come. But gratitude has limits. Just stay in your lane, okay? Show up, sit where we put you, don't talk to anyone important. Easy enough, right? She hung up before I could respond. I sat there with the phone in my hand, shaking. Not from anger, from something worse, from the realization that this was my life now. This was what I'd become. A joke, an embarrassment, a necessary evil to be tolerated and hidden away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Crystal's words. You're a wallet. Don't bring down the vibe. Stay in your lane. At 2 a.m, I got out of bed and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Really looked. 52 years old. Gray hair, lines around my eyes from years of squinting at engine parts, hands scarred from burns and cuts and decades of manual labor. I looked tired, used up, old. When had I gotten old? I thought about that photo again. Me at 25, confident, strong, alive. That man wouldn't have taken this. That man would have fought back. But that man was gone, buried under 30 years of compromise and defeat. Or maybe he wasn't gone. Maybe he was just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up. A week before the wedding, something strange happened. A man walked into Morrison's auto shop. I was under a Ford F-150, replacing a transmission, when I heard footsteps approach. Expensive shoes, Italian leather. Nobody who drove a car worth working on wore shoes like that in this neighborhood. Robert Patterson? I rolled out from under the truck. The man was about my age, maybe a few years older, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than I made in 3 months. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. That's me. David Reeves. We worked together years ago, before things changed. Then I remembered. Reeves Construction. I'd been a foreman there back when I was young and ambitious and stupid enough to think hard work mattered. Reeves had been middle management then, a climber who'd kissed the right asses and stabbed the right backs to get ahead. Last I'd heard, he owned half the commercial real estate in the city. What do you want? I heard about your son's wedding. Congratulations. How did you hear about that? I keep tabs on old colleagues, especially ones who were as good as you. He glanced around the shop, taking in the cracked concrete and fluorescent lights and oil stains that would never come out. You could have been running your own company by now. You had the talent. Life happened. Life. Right. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I have a proposition for you. A job. 3 weeks of work, good pay. I need someone I can trust. I've got a job. This pays better. $20,000 for 3 weeks, off the books, no questions asked. I stared at him. $20,000 was exactly what I owed the bank. Exactly. That couldn't be a coincidence. What's the catch? No catch. I need an experienced foreman for a demolition project. Old building downtown. Has to be done quietly, quickly. You have the skills. You remember how things used to work. Why me? Because I remember you. You were the best worker I ever saw. Honest, thorough, never cut corners. He paused. And because I heard what your son's been doing to you, taking your money, treating you like trash, figured you could use a break. Something in his tone made me suspicious. How much do you know about my situation? Enough. Small world, Robert. People talk, and I pay attention. He tapped the envelope. 3 weeks. $20,000. Cash. All you have to do is supervise the demolition and keep your mouth shut about what you find. What am I going to find? He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Nothing that concerns you? Just old building materials? Asbestos? Lead paint? The usual hazards? Nothing illegal? But the owner wants it done quietly? No permits, no inspections? You understand. I should have said no. Should have asked more questions. Should have recognized the danger in his words. But that crack in my chest was getting wider, and $20,000 would clear my debt, and maybe, just maybe, let me sleep at night without wondering when the bank would take my home. When do I start? Monday. I'll text you the address. He handed me the envelope. This is $5,000 up front, good faith. The rest comes when the job's done. He left before I could change my mind. I opened the envelope. $50 $100 bills, crisp and new. more cash than I'd held in years. That night, I counted it 3 times, fanned it out on my kitchen table, thought about what it meant. This was dirty money. Had to be. Nobody paid $20,000 under the table for a legitimate job. But I was tired of being broke, tired of being used, tired of being the good guy who always finished last. Maybe it was time to break the rules. The building was an old warehouse on the east side, surrounded by chain-link fence and no trespassing signs that looked like they'd been there for decades. Reeves met me there Monday morning with a crew of 5 men I'd never seen before. They were quiet, efficient, professional. The kind of guys who didn't ask questions and didn't expect answers. "We're gutting it," Reeves explained as we walked through the main floor. "Foundation to roof. 3 weeks, then the whole thing comes down. Who owns it? Does it matter?" It should have, but I was desperate and stupid and so tired of being poor and powerless that I just grabbed a sledgehammer and got to work. The building had been a storage facility, apparently. Most of it was empty, but we found remnants of old offices, break rooms, bathrooms with rusted fixtures and broken mirrors. On the second day, we found what looked like living quarters in the back. Cots, old blankets, empty food containers. Someone had been living here illegally, probably homeless people looking for shelter. On the third day, I found something else. A locked room in the basement. The door was steel, reinforced, with a padlock that looked newer than everything else in the building. I mentioned it to one of the crew, a big guy with tattoos covering both arms and a scar running down his left cheek. "Leave it," he said. "Reeves said not to touch the basement." "Why?" "Does it matter? You're getting paid to demo the building, not ask questions." But I was curious. And when you've spent your whole life being told what to do, there's something liberating about breaking the rules. So I went back after everyone left. The building was dark, empty, full of shadows that moved when I shined my flashlight. The basement stairs creaked under my weight, and I could smell mold and decay and something else, something chemical that made my eyes water. The lock was old, corroded despite its newer appearance. One good hit with the sledgehammer, and it popped open. The door swung inward with a rusty shriek that echoed through the empty building. Inside was a filing cabinet and a desk covered in dust thick enough to write your name in. I opened the top drawer of the cabinet and found files. Hundreds of them. Construction permits, building inspections, payoff receipts, and photos. Photos of Reeves with city officials, shaking hands at restaurants, passing envelopes under tables. Photos of cash changing hands. Photos of buildings that looked suspiciously similar to ones I'd seen on the news over the years. Buildings that had collapsed, sparking investigations that went nowhere. I was holding evidence of bribery, corruption, maybe worse. My hands shook as I flipped through the files. Names I recognized, dates going back 15 years, payment amounts in the hundreds of thousands, and construction reports, falsified inspection documents, forged safety certifications, altered blueprints. People had died because of this. I remembered the Morrison building collapse in 2019. The investigation had concluded it was an accident, poor materials, bad luck. But here was proof it was negligence, criminal negligence. "You shouldn't have done that." I spun around. Reeves stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 of his crew. The big guy with the scar and another man I'd barely spoken to. They didn't look friendly. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Insurance. I've been cleaning up loose ends for years. This building's the last one. Once it's gone, there's no evidence left of certain business arrangements." "Evidence of what? Bribing inspectors? Does it matter? You're getting paid well to demo this building and forget what you saw. Take the money, finish the job, go back to your sad little life and pretend this never happened." I looked at the files in my hands, thought about Jake and Crystal and the wedding and everything I'd sacrificed, thought about how nobody ever cared what happened to guys like me. We were disposable, invisible, useful only when someone needed something. And if I don't forget? Reeves smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Cold, empty. The smile of someone who'd done terrible things and slept fine afterward. Then you're part of what gets buried when this building comes down. Your choice, Robert. Easy money and a quiet life, or... He gestured to the men beside him. Well, let's not find out. I should have been scared, should have backed down. But something in me had shifted. That crack in my chest had opened wider, and something dark and angry was leaking out. I want more money, I heard myself say. Reeves raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You heard me. I want more money. 50,000 total, not 20. And I want it in cash, up front, before I finish this job. That's not the deal. The deal changed when I found evidence that could send you to prison for the rest of your life. 50,000, or these files go to the police. The big guy moved toward me. Reeves held up a hand, stopping him. He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating. You've got guts, he finally said. I'll give you that. 40,000. That's my final offer. 50. 45. And you walk away tonight. Don't come back. Don't finish the job. Just take your money and disappear. I thought about it. 45,000 would pay off my loan and leave me enough to start over. Maybe leave this city. Leave Jake and Crystal and everything that reminded me of how small I'd become. Deal. But I keep copies of the files. No. Then no deal. I keep copies as insurance. If anything happens to me, they go public. You leave me alone, I leave you alone. That's the arrangement. Reeves's jaw tightened. You're playing a dangerous game, Robert. I've got nothing to lose. You've got everything to lose. Who's playing the more dangerous game? He stared at me for another long moment, then nodded. Fine. Come back tomorrow night. Bring a bag. I'll have your money. Power. Control. The sense that I was the one calling the shots for once in my pathetic life. I spent the next hour photographing every document in that filing cabinet. Every page. Every photo. Every receipt. Then I uploaded them to a cloud storage account and sent copies to 3 different email addresses I created just for this purpose. Insurance, protection, the only leverage a nobody like me would ever have against someone like Reeves. The next night, I showed up at the warehouse with an empty duffel bag. Reeves was waiting with a briefcase. He opened it without a word. Inside were stacks of $100 bills neatly bundled. 45,000, he said. Count it if you want. I did. Every bill. It was all there. We're done, Reeves said as I zipped up the duffel. You never saw me. You never worked here. This conversation never happened. Agreed. And Robert, if I ever hear that you've talked to anyone about this, police, reporters, your priest, I'll know, and you'll disappear. Understand? I understand. I left. Drove home through empty streets with $45,000 in cash sitting on my passenger seat. Enough money to change everything. Enough money to tell Jake and Crystal to go to hell. Enough money to start over. But I didn't want to start over. Not anymore. Because something had changed in that basement. Something fundamental. I'd stood up to Reeves, negotiated, won. For the first time in years, I'd been the one with power, and it felt good. Better than good. It felt right. I split the money into 3 bundles. 15,000 went into a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Another 15 went to pay off my loan. The last 15 I kept in cash, hidden in my apartment. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No nightmares, no anxiety, just deep, dreamless sleep. The wedding was 1 week away. I spent the next week preparing. Not for the wedding, for what I was going to do at the wedding, because something had crystallized in my mind during those nights in the warehouse. A plan, simple, elegant, devastating. Jake and Crystal thought I was broken, thought I was too weak to fight back. They'd spent months treating me like garbage, and I'd taken it all without complaint. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I rented a tuxedo from a shop downtown, nothing fancy but respectable. The kid working there asked what the occasion was. My son's wedding. That's awesome. You must be excited. Yeah, I said, looking at myself in the mirror. The tuxedo made me look different. Not younger exactly, but more substantial, like someone who mattered. I'm very excited. I went to the venue 3 days before the wedding, pretending I wanted to see where I'd be sitting. The event coordinator, a harried woman named Susan, showed me around reluctantly. Table 12 is right here, she said, pointing to a spot behind a pillar in the back corner. Your son specified he wanted you somewhere quiet. I understand. Can I test the sound system? I have some old photos I want to show during the reception, and I want to make sure my laptop will connect properly. Oh, that's sweet. Of course. She helped me connect my laptop to their projection system and audio setup, showed me how the controls worked, how to switch between inputs, how to override anything that was currently playing. It's pretty simple, she said. You can control everything from your phone once it's connected to the network. Perfect. Thank you, Susan. I tested everything. Made sure I could access the system remotely. Made sure I could broadcast whatever I wanted on their giant projection screens. Then I disconnected and thanked her profusely. Your son is lucky to have such a thoughtful father, she said, if she only knew. The day of the wedding arrived. I woke up early, showered, shaved carefully, put on the tuxedo, looked at myself in the mirror one more time. The man staring back at me wasn't the broken mechanic Jake and Crystal expected. He was someone else, someone harder, someone who'd finally had enough. I drove to the Riverside Grand Hotel 2 hours early. The place was chaos, caterers rushing around, florists arranging centerpieces, Crystal screaming at someone about the wrong shade of white for the napkins. I slipped in unnoticed and found my table. Table 12, hidden behind a pillar, forgotten. Perfect. I pulled out my phone and connected to the venue's network. Everything was still configured from my test run. I had complete access to their sound and projection systems. A few taps, and I could broadcast anything I wanted to 500 guests. Jake appeared from a side room, looking stressed. He wore a custom suit that probably cost more than my car. When he saw me, his expression didn't change. No smile, no greeting. Just a slight nod, like I was a stranger he'd passed on the street. Dad, you made it. Wouldn't miss it. Good. Crystal's parents are here. Her father Harold is walking me down the aisle. We thought it would be better, more traditional, you know. You understand, right? I understand perfectly. Just remember what we talked about. No embarrassing stories, no speeches. Stay at your table. Be quiet. Let us handle everything. Don't worry, Jake. I know my place. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away without another word. Didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't thank me for the money. Didn't acknowledge that I'd raised him alone for 5 years, or that I'd sacrificed everything for him. Just walked away, like I was a problem he'd successfully managed. Crystal swept past a moment later, trailing bridesmaids and a cloud of expensive perfume. She saw me and stopped. Oh, you came. Wouldn't miss my son's wedding? Well, try not to look so miserable. You're bringing down the energy. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. And if you even think about asking us for that apartment again, I'll make sure everyone here knows exactly what kind of man you are. Clear? Crystal clear, I said. She smirked at her own name and walked away, already yelling at a bridesmaid about something. I sat down at table 12, alone, invisible, exactly where they wanted me. But I had my phone, and I had a plan, and in a few hours, everyone in this room was going to remember my name. Guests started arriving around 5. Lawyers in expensive suits, investors with trophy wives, Crystal's influencer friends with their perfect hair and designer dresses, They mingled in the lobby, sipping champagne, taking selfies, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't funny. Nobody looked at me. Nobody spoke to me. I was furniture. Less than furniture. At least furniture had a purpose. Linda arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her yoga instructor boyfriend trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit. They were seated at table 3, up front where everyone could see them. She spotted me in the back and waved. Actually waved. Like we were old friends instead of ex-spouses. Like she hadn't destroyed our family and abandoned our son. But that was Linda, always good at pretending the past didn't matter. The ceremony started at 6. Crystal's father, Harold, walked Jake down the aisle with his chest puffed out like he'd accomplished something great. He was a real estate developer, mid-60s, the kind of man who thought money made him important. He'd made his fortune in commercial construction, cutting corners and greasing palms, and building his empire on the backs of people like me. Crystal floated behind them in a dress that cost more than some cars. 24 years old and already an expert at manipulation. She knew exactly how pretty she was, exactly how to use tears or smiles or rage to get what she wanted. Jake had never stood a chance. The officiant was some friend of Crystal's family, a guy who talked about love like he was reading from a greeting card. Marriage is a journey, a partnership, a commitment to growing together. I almost laughed. Jake didn't know the first thing about commitment. He'd learned that from his mother. Does anyone object to this union? Silence. I stayed quiet. This wasn't my moment. Not yet. I had something better planned. Then, by the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. They kissed. Everyone applauded. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Crystal turned to face the crowd with a triumphant smile, like she'd just won something. Maybe she thought she had. The ceremony ended. Everyone moved to the reception hall for dinner. I stayed at table 12 watching waiters set out plates of food I couldn't afford to buy myself. The room filled with noise and laughter and the clinking of silverware on expensive china. Nobody sat with me. Nobody even looked my way. I was the embarrassment they'd successfully hidden in the back corner where I couldn't ruin their perfect day. I ordered a whiskey from a passing waiter. He brought it without a word. I sipped it slowly and waited. Dinner was surf and turf that probably tasted amazing. I wouldn't know. It tasted like cardboard to me. Or maybe that was just the rage building in my throat, making everything bitter. I watched Jake and Crystal at the head table. They fed each other cake, laughed at private jokes, posed for photos with guests who lined up to congratulate them, playing their parts perfectly. The happy couple. The golden children who'd earned everything through hard work and determination. Except they hadn't earned anything. Jake had gotten his education from my 60-hour work weeks. Crystal had gotten her lifestyle from her father's corruption. They were frauds, both of them, and everyone in this room was buying the act. Linda made a speech. Something about how proud she was of Jake, how far he'd come, how she always knew he'd find someone special. She didn't mention me, didn't acknowledge that I'd raised him alone while she was off finding herself in Florida. Just took all the credit and basked in the applause. Harold spoke next. Talked about family values and tradition and how happy he was to welcome Jake into the family. My daughter deserves the best, he said, and Jake is exactly that. Smart, ambitious, he's going places. Yeah, to prison maybe, if I had anything to say about it. Crystal's maid of honor went next. Some giggling nonsense about friendship and beauty and how Crystal was living proof that dreams come true. I tuned her out and finished my whiskey. Then Jake stood up. He had a microphone in his hand and that confident smile he'd learned from his mother. The smile that meant he was about to say something calculated and false. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he started. Crystal and I are so grateful for your support. We couldn't have done this without all of you. he was looking at the head tables, at Crystal's parents, at his mother, at the investors and important people who mattered. Not once did his eyes drift to the back of the room where I sat alone in the shadows. I especially want to thank my mom for everything she's done, for her guidance and love and support. She's been incredible through this whole process, helping with planning, offering advice. I couldn't have done this without her. The crowd applauded. Linda stood and waved, soaking in the attention. Jake continued, "And I want to thank Harold and Margaret for welcoming me into their family. They've treated me like a son, better than I ever could have hoped." Better than he ever could have hoped. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Better than his actual father, who'd worked himself into the ground for 26 years to give him everything he had. Jake paused, looked around the room. His eyes landed on me for just a second, one brief, dismissive glance, and then moved on. "Crystal and I built this life together," he said. "Without help from people who didn't believe in us, without support from people who said we'd never make it. We proved everyone wrong. We did this ourselves." Without help. The lie was so blatant I almost admired it. $28,000, 30 years of sacrifice, all erased with one sentence. The crowd applauded again. Jake handed the microphone to Crystal, who launched into her own speech about friendship and love and overcoming obstacles. I stopped listening. My vision had tunneled. My hands were shaking. That crack in my chest, the one that had been widening for months, finally shattered completely. And then I saw it. On my table. 3 feet from my hand. A backup microphone, placed there by a careless sound tech who'd been setting up earlier. Crystal was still talking. "And I know some people didn't think we'd make it this far. Some people thought Jake wasn't good enough for me, or that I was too young, or whatever. But we proved them wrong. We built this life together, without anyone's help, and we're going to keep building it. Without anyone's help." My hand moved before my brain caught up. I picked up the microphone, turned it on. The click echoed through the speakers like a gunshot. Crystal stopped mid-sentence. Everyone turned to look at table 12, at the forgotten father, at the ghost, who'd just become very, very real. The room went silent. "I have something to say," I announced. My voice came out cold, steady, strong, nothing like the weak man they'd expected. Jake's face went white. Crystal's went red. Harold half stood from his seat, looking confused and angry. Linda just stared, her mouth hanging open. "Dad, don't," Jake started. "Sit down, Jacob." The words came out like bullets, sharp, final. "I've been quiet all night, all week, all year. Now it's my turn." "Sir, this isn't appropriate," Harold tried. "I said sit down." He sat. Everyone sat. 500 people, frozen in place, staring at me, waiting. I walked around the pillar, stepped into the light, where everyone could see me clearly for the first time all night. The forgotten father, the embarrassment, the man who'd paid for everything they were eating and drinking and celebrating. "My name is Robert Patterson," I said, my voice echoing through the speakers. "I'm Jake's father, and I want to tell you all a story." "Security!" Crystal hissed at someone near the door. "Let him talk," Linda said suddenly. She was leaning forward in her seat, smiling slightly, because she'd always loved chaos, and this was chaos at its finest. 32 years ago, I married a woman I loved," I began. "We had a son. I worked construction back then, good money, honest work. I was a foreman, had 15 men under me, had a future, had respect. I was somebody." You could hear champagne bubbles popping in glasses. Then Linda decided she wanted out, wanted to find herself, wanted to be free. So she left. Just packed up one day and walked away from our 5-year-old son to go do yoga in Florida with a man young enough to be her student. Linda's smile disappeared. Her boyfriend shifted uncomfortably. I raised Jake alone, worked doubles, triples, missed birthdays and holidays and every single important moment because I was too busy trying to pay for his private school, his college, his car, his apartment, his life. I was pacing now, microphone in hand, and I could feel the power thrumming through me. 500 people hanging on my every word. I gave him everything, sacrificed everything, and you know what I got in return? I looked at Jake, really looked at him. A son who thinks I'm an embarrassment. A son who told me not to talk to anyone important tonight because I might bring down the vibe. A son who took $28,000 from me and couldn't even say thank you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harold was on his feet again. "Sir, this is wildly inappropriate." "Sit down, Harold. I'm not done yet." "You need to leave," he said, his voice tight with anger. "This is a private event. You're disrupting. I paid for this private event. Every cent. The venue, the flowers, the food you're all eating. $20,000 I didn't have, borrowed against my home because my son said if I didn't pay, I wouldn't be welcome here." More murmurs. Louder now. People were looking at Jake and Crystal with new expressions. Confused, suspicious. "But paying wasn't enough," I continued, "because Jake's new family has standards. Crystal made sure I knew that. Called me pathetic, told me I was just a wallet, said I should stay in my lane and not embarrass them with my situation." Crystal stood up, her face scarlet. "He's lying. He's crazy. Someone get him out of here." "Am I lying, Crystal? Ask the valet. Ask the waiter who saw you slap me in the parking lot an hour ago. Ask your own father who was standing right there when you demanded I hand over the keys to my apartment so you two could have a starter place to live in." The room exploded. Everyone talking at once. Harold's face had gone purple. Margaret, Crystal's mother, looked horrified. Linda was actually laughing. "She hit you?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Across the face, in front of 3 witnesses, because I had the audacity to say no, because after 30 years of giving everything, I finally set a boundary." Jake was standing now, trying to get to me, but people were in his way. "Dad, please, stop this. We can talk about this later." "No, we'll talk about it now. In front of all these people you wanted to impress. All these important investors and clients and influencers. Let them see who you really are." I pulled out my phone, tapped a few buttons. The projection screens around the room flickered to life. "You wanted this wedding to be perfect," I said. "To show everyone how successful you are, how far you've come. But success built on lies isn't success. It's fraud." The screens filled with images, the files from Reeves's warehouse, photos of Harold with city officials, cash changing hands, falsified inspection reports, buildings that had collapsed. The room went silent again, everyone staring at the screens, at the evidence of corruption and bribery and criminal negligence. "What is that?" someone asked. "That," I said, "is proof that Harold Thompson has been bribing city inspectors for 15 years, falsifying safety reports, cutting corners on construction projects." Harold's face went from purple to white. "That's insane. That's not... Where did you get those?" "Does it matter? What matters is they're real. The Morrison building collapsed in 2019. Your company was the primary contractor. You signed off on inspection reports that were falsified. You knew the building wasn't safe, and you approved it anyway because saving money was more important than saving lives." "You can't prove any of this," Harold sputtered, but his voice was shaking. "I can. I have original documents, copies in 3 different locations. And if I don't check in with my lawyer every 24 hours, they go to the FBI, the district attorney, every news outlet in the state." Margaret grabbed Harold's arm. Crystal looked like she might vomit. The entire room was in chaos. People shouting questions, pulling out phones, trying to process what they were seeing. "This is extortion!" Harold roared. "I'll have you arrested." "No. Extortion is what you've been doing to contractors for 15 years. This is justice. This is accountability. This is what happens when you think you're untouchable." Jake finally reached me, grabbed my arm. "Dad, please." "What do you want?" "We'll fix this. We'll pay you back. Just stop." I looked at him. My son. My only child. The person I'd loved more than anything in the world. And I saw nothing there but panic and self-interest. No remorse, no understanding, just fear that his perfect life was falling apart. It's too late for that, Jake. It's not. Tell me what you want, please. I want my money back, all of it. $28,000. You have 48 hours to wire it to my account. We don't have it. The wedding cost $30,000. We're broke. Then sell something. The car Crystal's daddy bought you, the furniture, whatever you can find. Because if I don't have my money in 48 hours, these files go public. Harold goes to prison, and you get to explain to everyone how you married into a family of criminals. You wouldn't do that to your own son. Watch me. Crystal appeared at Jake's side, mascara running down her face. This is your fault, she screamed at him. I told you your father was trash. I told you not to invite him. Crystal, not now. Yes, now. This whole wedding is ruined because of him. She turned to me, rage replacing fear. You're pathetic. A sad, bitter old man who can't stand to see his son happy. You're jealous because your life is a failure and his isn't. My life is a failure? I said quietly. I worked an honest job for 30 years. Never cheated anyone. Never lied. Your father's built his entire empire on corruption, and you're standing here calling me pathetic? My father is successful. He's powerful. He matters. You're just a mechanic who couldn't keep his wife or earn his son's respect. The words should have hurt. A week ago they would have destroyed me. But now they just bounced off. Because I'd finally realized something important. Her opinion didn't matter. Jake's opinion didn't matter. None of this mattered except the fact that I'd finally stood up for myself. You're right, I said. I'm just a mechanic. But I'm a mechanic who has enough evidence to destroy your father's life. So I guess that makes me matter after all. I turned away from them, faced the crowd. 500 people watching the greatest show of their lives. I want everyone here to understand something, I said. I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm not doing this because I'm bitter or jealous or any of the other things Crystal just accused me of. I'm doing this because for 30 years, I've been silent. I've taken abuse. I've let people walk all over me because I thought that's what good fathers do. Good men. But I was wrong. I looked at Jake one more time. Being good doesn't mean being weak. It doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left. I'm done being that man, done being invisible, done being used. So here's what happens next. Jake and Crystal have 48 hours to return my money, all of it. If they don't, the files go public. Harold gets investigated, probably goes to prison, and everyone here tonight gets to watch the perfect wedding turn into a crime scene. I set the microphone down on the nearest table. The thud echoed through the speakers. Oh, and one more thing, I said. That apartment Crystal demanded? The one you wanted as a starter place? I'm selling it, moving somewhere you'll never find me, living my life for myself for the first time in 3 decades. I walked toward the exit. People parted in front of me like I was Moses splitting the Red Sea. Nobody tried to stop me. Not security. Not Harold. Not Jake. At the door, I turned back one last time. Jake was standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by chaos, looking lost and small, and absolutely terrified. Goodbye, Jake, I said. I hope it was worth it. Then I walked out into the cool night air and didn't look back. My phone started ringing before I even got to my car. Jake, Crystal, Harold, Linda. Numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. Let them ring and ring until the notifications filled my screen. I drove home through empty streets, adrenaline still pumping through my veins. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but not from fear, from release, from the overwhelming sense that I'd finally done something right. My apartment looked exactly the same as when I'd left it that morning. Small, plain, full of cheap furniture and old memories. but it felt different now. It felt like mine. I poured myself a whiskey, sat on my couch, checked my phone, 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, most from Jake, increasingly desperate. "Dad, please call me back. We need to talk. Crystal's parents are freaking out. You're ruining my marriage. Call me now." I deleted them all without responding. At midnight, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. Jake, looking haggard and desperate. I opened the door. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, then just stood there like he didn't know what to do with himself. "Crystal left me," he said finally. "Packed a bag and went to her parents' house. Said she can't be married to someone whose father is trying to destroy her family." "I'm not trying to destroy her family, I'm just exposing what they already are." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Harold's company stock dropped 15% in the last hour. The news is already covering it. Corruption allegations at wealthy wedding. It's everywhere. Good. Good? Dad, you've destroyed my life. No. I've given you a chance to build a real life. One not based on lies and other people's money. He laughed bitterly. A real life? I'm 26 years old with no job, no money, and a wife who just left me. My father-in-law might go to prison. My wedding is viral for all the wrong reasons. What life is left? The one you build yourself, without Crystal's family's connections, without my money, without anyone's help but your own. I can't do that. Yes, you can. You're smart, educated, capable. You just never had to try because everyone else was doing the work for you. He sank onto my couch, dropped his head into his hands. I can't pay you back. We don't have the money. Everything went to the wedding. I know. So what? You're really going to send Harold to prison? Destroy Crystal's family? Ruin my marriage? That's not up to me. That's up to you. You have 48 hours to figure it out. How? How am I supposed to get $28,000 in 2 days? The same way I did. Work for it, borrow it, sell things, figure it out. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Desperation, fear, but also, maybe, a tiny spark of respect. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything, for how I treated you, for Crystal, for all of it. I know. Will you really do it? Send those files to the FBI?" I thought about the 3 workers who'd died in the Morrison building, about their families, about all the other people Harold had hurt over the years in his quest for profit. Yes. Even knowing it'll destroy me? You destroyed yourself, Jake. I'm just holding up a mirror. He left without another word. I locked the door behind him and finished my whiskey. The next 48 hours were chaos. My phone never stopped ringing. Messages poured in from people I hadn't talked to in years. The story had gone viral. Father exposes son's in-laws at wedding, and everyone wanted a piece of it. News vans showed up outside my apartment. I didn't talk to any of them. Just went to work at Morrison's, fixed cars, came home. Harold hired lawyers. They sent me threatening letters, cease and desist orders, claims of defamation. I forwarded them all to a public defender I'd contacted, a young woman named Sarah who seemed genuinely excited to take on a corruption case. "This is good evidence," she said, looking through the files I'd given her. "Really good. If even half of this is authentic, Harold's going away for a long time." "It's all authentic." "How did you get it? Does it matter?" She studied me for a moment. "You know you could be charged with extortion. What you did at the wedding." "I know. And you're okay with that?" "I'm 52 years old. I've spent my whole life being stepped on. If I have to face some consequences for finally standing up, so be it." She smiled slightly. "I like you, Mr. Patterson. We'll figure this out." The FBI showed up on the second day. 2 agents in dark suits, professional and polite. They asked about Reeves, about the warehouse, about how I'd gotten the files. I told them everything except Reeves's threat. Let them think I'd just stumbled on the evidence accidentally. David Reeves is a person of interest in multiple ongoing investigations, the senior agent said. If your evidence connects to those cases, you've done the city a great service. And Harold Thompson? Him too. We'll be looking into everything you've provided. If the documents are legitimate, he's facing serious charges. They left. I went back to work. At the 47-hour mark, my bank account pinged. A wire transfer. $28,000. Sender, Jacob Patterson. I called him. He answered on the first ring, his voice exhausted. It's done. We sold everything. The car, Crystal's jewelry, took out loans, borrowed from friends. It's all there. Thank you. Silence on the line. What happens now? He asked. Now you figure out who you are without anyone else's money or influence. And us? You and me? I thought about that question. Thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the years of sacrifice met with indifference. I don't know, Jake. Maybe someday. But not now. Not for a long time. Will you really send the files to the news? That depends on Harold. If he takes responsibility for what he's done, faces justice, maybe I'll hold off. But if he tries to weasel out of this, if he uses his money and connections to escape consequences, then yes, everything goes public. He's already lawyering up, claiming the documents are fake. Then I guess he made his choice. Dad. Goodbye, Jake. I hung up. I transferred half the money into a trust fund, designated it for Jake's future children, if he ever had any. Money they could access for education or emergencies, but only after they turned 18. Money their parents couldn't touch. The other half went to a victims fund, specifically for families affected by the Morrison building collapse and other construction failures. Anonymous donation. No name attached. I kept nothing for myself. Didn't need it. The satisfaction was enough. 2 weeks later, Harold Thompson and 3 city officials were indicted on corruption charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Even Harold's expensive lawyers couldn't make it go away. The trial would take years. But he'd been arrested, fingerprinted, mugshot. His face was all over the news, looking old and small and scared. Everything he'd built was collapsing around him, just like those buildings he'd cut corners on. Crystal filed for divorce. I heard about it through Linda, who'd called to tell me she was proud of what I'd done. I hung up on her. Jake sent me one email. I got a job. Sales position. It's not much, but it's honest work. I'm trying. That's all I can do. I didn't respond, but I was glad. Maybe there was hope for him after all. David Reeves disappeared. The FBI had a warrant for his arrest, but he'd vanished. Probably in some country without extradition treaties, spending his dirty money and never facing justice. But 3 out of 4 wasn't bad. 6 months later, I sold my apartment. Got a decent price for it, enough to buy a small house in a different city. Somewhere, nobody knew me. Somewhere, I could start fresh. Morrison's threw me a going-away party. Nothing fancy. Pizza and beer in the shop after hours. Good people who'd never treated me like I was less than them. Where you headed? My boss asked. West. Somewhere quiet. You'll be missed. Best mechanic I ever had. You'll find someone better. Doubt it. I packed everything I owned into my car. Didn't have much. Clothes, tools, a few photos. At the last minute, I grabbed one picture of Jake as a kid. 5 years old, grinning at the camera, missing his front tooth. Before everything got complicated. Before I failed him by trying too hard or not hard enough or whatever the hell I did wrong. I tucked it in my wallet and drove away from the city I'd lived in my entire life. The new place was perfect. Small house, quiet neighborhood. Nobody who knew my story or cared about my past. I got a job at a local repair shop. Started over. 1 year after the wedding, Jake called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hi, Dad. Jake. I just wanted to tell you, Crystal and I are officially divorced. It's final. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a mistake from the start. I can see that now. She was using me to get away from her family, and I was using her to feel important. Neither of us loved the other. Not really. What are you doing now? Working. Got promoted, actually. Assistant manager at the company. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. Making my own money, my own decisions. That's good, Jake. And I've been thinking about what you said. About building a life for myself. You were right. I never did that before. Always took the easy path. Let other people carry me. You're doing it now. That's what matters. Silence for a moment. I miss you, he said quietly. I know I don't have the right to. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I miss my dad. My throat tightened. I miss you too. Can I come visit sometime? I'd understand if you said no, but I'd like to try, to fix things. If that's even possible. I looked around my small house, at the life I'd built for myself, the peace I'd found. And I thought about whether I was ready to risk that peace by letting Jake back in. Not yet, I said finally. But maybe someday. Keep working on yourself. Keep building your life. And when you've proven you're serious, we'll talk. Okay, thank you. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. He laughed, and I heard real humor in it. Not the practiced fake laugh he used to use. Real amusement at the truth. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Jake. We hung up. I sat in my quiet house and thought about second chances, about whether people could really change, about whether I could ever fully forgive my son for what he'd done. I didn't know the answer. Maybe I never would. But for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the broken man who took abuse in silence, not the ghost at table 12, just Robert Patterson, mechanic, 53 years old, living his life on his own terms. Harold Thompson's trial started 2 years after the wedding. It was all over the news. 17 counts of bribery, 8 counts of falsifying documents. The prosecution's case was built largely on the evidence I'd provided. Every document, every photo, every receipt. They played it all for the jury piece by piece, building an undeniable picture of corruption. Harold's lawyers tried everything, claimed the evidence was stolen, inadmissible, fabricated, but forensic analysis proved it was all authentic. And once the prosecution started finding corroborating evidence, bank records, testimony from other officials, more files from other sources, Harold's case fell apart. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Harold was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. He'd be 81 when he got out, if he lived that long. Margaret divorced him before he even started serving his sentence. Took half of what was left of his assets and moved to Florida. Crystal, already divorced from Jake, cut off contact with both parents and disappeared into obscurity. I watched the sentencing on TV in my living room. When the judge read the sentence, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet sense that justice had been served. 3 families had lost loved ones in that building collapse. Now, finally, someone was being held accountable. That night, I got an email from one of those families, the daughter of a man who died in the Morrison building. I don't know if you'll see this, but I wanted to say thank you. My father died doing his job, and for 5 years we were told it was just an accident, that nobody was to blame. But you proved that was a lie. You gave us answers. You gave us justice. Thank you. I read that email 3 times. Then I saved it in a folder I titled Worth It, because it was worth it. All of it. The chaos at the wedding, the destroyed relationship with my son, the year of stress and lawyers and investigations. It was worth it because 3 families finally had answers. Finally had someone to hold accountable. That was what mattered. Not revenge, not my own hurt feelings, Justice. 3 years after the wedding, Jake showed up at my door unannounced. I opened it to find him standing there, older and more tired, but somehow more real than I'd ever seen him. "Hi, Dad." "Jake, what are you doing here?" "I know you said not yet. I know you're not ready, but I needed to see you, to tell you something." I stepped aside. He came in, looked around at my small house with its worn furniture and bare walls. "It's nice," he said. "Quiet. It suits me." We sat down. He was nervous, fidgeting with his hands the way he used to as a kid when he'd done something wrong. "I got engaged," he said finally. I felt something twist in my chest. "Congratulations." "Her name is Emily. She's a teacher. We met at a coffee shop. She doesn't know anything about my past, about Crystal or the wedding or any of it. I told her, of course. Told her everything, but she doesn't judge me for it. That's good. We're getting married next spring. Small ceremony. Just close friends and family. And I wanted—" He paused, looked at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy he used to be. "I wanted to ask if you'd come, if you'd walk me down the aisle this time." I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. My throat had closed up. "I know I don't deserve it," Jake continued. "I know I hurt you in ways I can't ever fully make up for. But I've changed, Dad. Really changed. I work hard. I'm honest. I don't take anything for granted. And Emily, she's nothing like Crystal. She's kind. Real. She works at an underfunded public school and uses her own money to buy supplies for her students. She's the kind of person who makes me want to be better. She sounds wonderful. She is, and she wants to meet you. Says any father who'd stand up like you did must be worth knowing." I thought about the last 3 years, the peace I'd built, the life I'd created for myself, and I thought about whether I was ready to risk that by letting Jake back in. But he wasn't the same person who'd humiliated me at that wedding. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he held himself. He'd grown up. Finally, 3 years too late, but better late than never. "I'll think about it," I said. His face fell slightly, but he nodded. "That's fair. More than fair. I'll leave you my information. Emily's too, if you want to talk to her. No pressure, but I really hope you'll come." He stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. I was a terrible son, selfish and entitled and cruel. You deserved better." "Yes, I did." He flinched at the bluntness, but didn't argue. Just nodded and left. I sat in my quiet house and thought about forgiveness, about second chances, about whether the man Jake had become deserved a place in my life. I didn't know yet. But for the first time, I was willing to consider it. I met Emily 2 months later. Jake had been right. She was nothing like Crystal. Mid-30s, warm smile, laugh lines around her eyes. She dressed simply and carried herself without pretension. We met at a diner halfway between our cities. Jake was nervous, but Emily was calm. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Patterson," she said. "Jake talks about you all the time. Nothing good, I imagine." "Actually, mostly good. He talks about how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed, and how much he took it for granted." She reached across the table, squeezed Jake's hand. "He's not that person anymore. I've seen him grow, seen him work on himself. He's a good man now." "Now," I repeated. "Yes, now. People can change, Mr. Patterson, if they're willing to do the work." We talked for 2 hours, about her teaching, about Jake's job, about their plans for a simple wedding at a local park. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just them and the people who mattered. "I don't want his money," she said when the check came. "I make enough to support myself. And Jake's learning to do the same. We're building something together, something real." I paid for lunch despite their protests. When we walked out to the parking lot, Emily hugged me. "I hope you'll come to the wedding," she said. "Jake needs his father there. The real one, not the ghost he treated like trash. After they left, I sat in my car and made a decision. Jake's second wedding was nothing like his first. No grand venue, no hundreds of guests, no pretension. Just 20 people in a park on a sunny spring afternoon. I stood next to him as his best man, walked him down the aisle, which was really just a path between folding chairs, and handed him off to Emily. She wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. No makeup artist, no professional photographer, just a friend with a camera. They wrote their own vows. Jake's were simple. I promise to be honest, to work hard, to never take you for granted, to be the man you deserve, not the boy I used to be. Emily's made me cry. I promise to stand beside you, to help you grow, to love you not despite your past, but including it, because it made you who you are now. At the reception, pizza and beer at a rented community center, Jake stood up to make a speech. I want to thank everyone for being here, he started. Especially my dad. He looked at me. I looked back. 3 years ago, I had a different wedding. Big, expensive, perfect, and I treated my father like garbage, took his money, took his love, gave him nothing in return. That wedding was beautiful, but it was built on lies. His voice cracked slightly. Emily reached for his hand. This wedding is different. It's small and cheap and probably not Instagram-worthy. But it's real. It's honest. It's everything that first wedding wasn't. And my dad is here not because I demanded it or paid him to come, but because I earned it. Because I spent 3 years proving I'd changed, proving I could be the son he deserved. He raised his glass. To my father, the strongest man I know, the man who taught me that standing up for yourself isn't cruel, it's necessary. Thank you, Dad, for everything, including that microphone. Everyone laughed. Even me. We hugged after the speech. Real hug. Long and tight and full of things we didn't need to say. I'm proud of you, I whispered. I'm trying to be someone you can be proud of. You're getting there. Epilogue. 5 years after that first wedding, I'm 57 years old, still fixing cars, still living in my quiet house, still at peace with who I am. Jake and Emily visit every few months. They had a daughter last year, Sophie, my granddaughter. She has Jake's eyes and Emily's smile, and when she laughs, it sounds like hope. Harold got out of prison after serving 12 years. Health problems got his sentence reduced. He lives in a small apartment now, alone, working part-time at a hardware store to pay his restitution. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about those 3 workers, if he ever feels remorse. I'll never know. Crystal remarried, some tech guy in California. I saw the announcement on social media. She's blonde now instead of brunette and goes by a different name, trying to outrun her past. Linda sends Christmas cards every year. I don't respond. Drug cartel violence, apparently. Maybe karma, maybe coincidence. Either way, the world kept turning. The Morrison Building families got their settlement from Harold's insurance. Not enough to bring their loved ones back, but enough to help. Enough to matter. And me? I'm still just a mechanic. Still nobody important. Still invisible to most of the world. But I'm not weak anymore. I'm not silent. I'm not the man who takes abuse because he thinks he has to. I'm the man who picked up a microphone at his son's wedding and took control of his own story. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled things differently, more quietly, less dramatically. I tell them no, not for a second, because that night changed everything, not just for me, but for everyone involved. Jake became a better man, Harold faced justice, 3 families got answers, and I learned the most important lesson of my life. Silence isn't strength, it's surrender. Real strength is standing up, speaking out, refusing to be invisible anymore. My son told me to be quiet at his wedding, to not speak, to stay hidden. So I stayed silent through every insult, every betrayal, every humiliation, until I spotted that microphone. And then I took complete control, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.